the Power of the Jedi Sandtrooper figure is a really special one for me, because while there's been literally thousands of original trilogy figures released over the years, this is one of those rare figures where I remember exactly where I was, when I was, why I was, where I was when I bought it. And I think we all have figures like that in our collection, and they tend to be sort of, just that little bit of extra special. But before jumping into that, let's talk about what this figure is, and what it is and isn't is a sand trooper with micro binoculars. Micronoculars? Binoculars. The thing he uses to look through. And it was cool, and it was part of sort of the second big wave of Power of the Jedi, which was the combination of Episode 1 and Classic Trilogy, with about a 50-50 split. At least that was the request from Lucasfilm after the Phantom Menace toys didn't perform as well, and they could only have one 3 3/4 line. To even have that. All right, well, as part of the Power of the Jedi line, of course, with accessories and deco and articulation galore, we also got our file card telling us who this character was, their vital statistics, what they had for lunch last week, and how many times they got dumped at the prom. Now, when I say this was a special figure, it's also because it was bought at a special place. FAO Schwarz. In fact, this is the only figure in my entire collection that I bought at FAO Schwarz. And while I wish I could say it was the big giant flagship in New York, which I do go to that store every year when I'm visiting New York for New York Toy Fair, or at least while it still existed, sniff. I know, we lost Toys R Us and FAO Schwarz. How can we keep going? I mean, it had like original toy lines and aisles that just couldn't exist in other places, like the ultimate boutique toy shop. Anyway, the point being is FAO Schwarz is missed. The one I went to was the one at South Coast Plaza. And yes, I know this sign is actually across the street from the real South Coast Plaza, you Orange County sticklers, you. But yes, growing up in Orange County, California, hi Disneyland, I also hung out at South Coast Plaza a lot. And I'm sure you did too if you were there, like me, in Orange County in the 90s. Or, even before that. It's not like they built in the 90s. But in the 90s, it definitely kind of peaked out. I mean, malls, I don't know what condition it is anymore. It is a high-end mall, but it had some really cool stores when I was a teenager, and I think one of the best being it had a FAO Schwarz, which was awesome. They had a giant bear out in front, and I don't know, I mean, well, it was great because anytime I, got dragged to the mall by anyone, at least I could escape into a toy store, and what a toy store it was. I mean, it had the sound, the music, and the exclusives. If it wasn't for this FAO Schwarz, I probably would have never seen so many toys that they had that were customized, or exclusives, as collectors call them. I never bought this pack, but I sure did get to see it in person, which was really cool, and one of the reasons I loved having an FAO Schwarz as part of my toy run. Especially remember it was the only place I ever saw these Tarzan Epic Adventures figures. I'm sure they were probably at Toys R Us or KB Toys as well, but man, as a Burroughs fan, and the fact that this line combined like all of his novels together, Center of the Earth, Mars, Jungle, it all came together. And anyway, if you're ever looking for a good read, you can't go wrong with a Burroughs book, because they're really fun. It is always amazing how everyone knows Tarzan, but no one knows Pellucidar. Thanks to Disney for screwing up John Carter. Okay, I'm totally off track. Back to FAO Schwarz. So yeah, sadly, while we've actually lost all of our FAO Schwarz, the one that I had access to at South Coast Plaza in Orange County in the 90s did go the A way earlier than the whole company. We did get a Puzzle Zoo for a while, which was, again, great. Just to have any toy store. I think there was a time they overlapped, and we had two of them. It was pretty insane. All right, we should probably get back to actually talking about this figure. Oh, and I should add the reason I remember it is because I was hanging out with my high school girlfriend home from college. We were both home from college, and we decided to go to the mall together just to catch up. And I snuck off to FAO Schwarz and couldn't believe I actually saw a new figure, and I had to buy it, and I had to kind of hide it from her because I didn't want her to know that I snuck off to buy toys, because it was embarrassing enough that I did it. I mean, now I've owned myself, and I know and I love my toys, but back then you were kind of like, yeah, it was still kind of, shall we say, a hidden hobby. All right, loud and proud freak flag nowadays, people. All right. So, with my memories out of the way, let's just get back to looking at the history of Sandtrooper action figures, which starts with this guy, because the original line from Kenner never had one, more's the pity. And while it was great to basically get a Power of the Force Stormtrooper with Sandtrooper Padawans, pauldrons, boy, Star Wars on the brain. Eventually, we did get an updated Power of the Force highly articulated Stormtrooper. At least it was more screen accurate, especially proportions and with the helmet, etc., which meant that the old Sandtrooper was now even more out of date. So if we had a new Stormtrooper, vis-a-vis, we were going to need a new Sandtrooper. And new Sandtroopers we would get, in fact, because of the variance in deco and pauldron color, I almost said Padawan color, and weapons and rank, and there's even different versions of what hangs over the shoulder. We've had singles, we've had 2-packs, we've had metal figures, we've had multiple vintage collection figures, we've had figures with light-up blasters that were only released in Canada, and in fact there's been more than one vintage series release with more than one variant and multiple pauldron color and deco variants. So yay, lots of Sandtroopers. But back before we were treated to all of this, including what probably culminated in the ultimate Sandtrooper experience, the Build a Troop or Troop Builder pack offered online, although we did get really great clear stands, which is awesome. But yeah, it was just, the same. It was actually this figure we're talking about, which was re-released. It was with all the different pauldrons, but we'll get to that figure eventually. Sadly, yes, we never had a vintage one, which is probably why there are so many today. It's making up for lost memories. What can we say, right? When we're denied something as a child, we really want it as an adult, and when there's such variety actually in the content and on screen, it makes sense that, well, if I had the toy license, I'd be milking this for all it was worth, too. I mean, it's a Stormtrooper. That's even cooler, because he's got a backpack and dirt. And this one had binoculars and a smaller rifle, that thanks to the 300th Boba Fett, for sort of resetting the gun accessory size for the entire line. You could see the continued influence of that figure. Now, this is interesting because it is a very specific Sandtrooper. You remember the dewbacks? Well, I mean, we all remember the dewbacks going back to 1977 when they were just in the background, but after the special edition and everything got replaced by shiny, shiny spaceships in the sky and giant dinosaur-like dewbacks crawling in the sand, well, hey, progress. But see that dude? That dude in the middle with the binoculars or micronoculars or whatever they call them? Look it up, nerds. Yeah, that was this figure. So they actually were making a specific Sandtrooper. But interestingly, the image on the file card is the guy going, move along, in Mos Eisley later on. So wrong image. But hey, what you going to do? That happens all the time. Just go look at any, was it Warrock action figures? He's or Ramba? One of the Ewoks is always wrong. All right, anyway, back to this figure. I do miss the original, dewback scene, when dewbacks had like a little bit of hair on them. These were just, puppets in the desert. And they got replaced, obviously, by these giant CGI dinosaurs, which as a dinosaur fan, I love having a Star Wars dinosaur to collect. But I am glad that some elements of the original remain. So, for example, that lobby card that gave us this image, which was really basically the only close-up we ever saw of a dewback, since in the original film they were in the extreme background. But it's cool that The Mandalorian paid homage to it, and we got that same camera looking up at the rider shot. And when that came up on screen, I was like, yes! Oh, I know. It's like, that's when you feel good, like you can appreciate something on a whole other level. That's what makes us awesome nerds.